Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to a new tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you all the basics for SAMP scripting with Pawn. Now basically I'm going to teach you everything about variables, callbacks, functions, commands, forwards, publics, loops and stock functions all in this one video. So stay tuned guys. If you're brand new, this is the perfect video for you. So make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to teach you absolutely everything. So basically the first thing I'm going to teach you is variables. So and I'm going to actually put timestamps in this video. So if you want to jump to any of these, just click the timestamp in the description and you'll jump to that section. But basically we'll start with variables. So basically there's variables. So like a new variable, think of a variable like new variable, right? So a new variable can equal 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. So basically a variable is called an integer, which is a number. Just think of it as a number. So this and this is the exact same variable, just named differently. So think of variables as numbers, right? So there's numbers, but it can also be a decimal. So a variable can be a decimal as well. So a number will be just a solid number like that, and a decimal will have a decimal point like this. Like forget this, I'll teach you this or in a sec. But basically strings are basically text. So hello is actually like the 6 here means how many cells are within the text. So you need to specify how many cells there is within the string. So basically there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells like for hello. So if we wanted to print that string, we need to at least specify 6 cells. So it's how many cells the text is plus 1. You always just add plus 1, which is null, I believe, which is practically 1. So that's why you add 1. Because if you've done 5, it would actually only show hell. So make sure you put 6. And for like floats are basically positions. So you know, float x, this is just one position. So x, well, a position consists of x, y and z position. So there's basically that would be x, and if there was like an x y position, it would be like this. It would be x y z. So that's only three different floats, but a position consists of that. It also consists of a facing angle as well. So you can have float A, and that's a facing angle as well. But that's basically floats. And the last one is booleans. So booleans are basically checks, true or false. So you can do like checks. You know, a check under here. So if check equals true, we can do something, sort of thing, you know what I mean? So that's just how basic variables and all things sort of work. The next thing is basically I'm going to code everything into a game mode. If you're really new to this and you haven't sort of figured this out, if you're sort of getting errors where your game modes won't work, it's usually because of this. If you haven't got this function or whatever it is, it's basically the main. I think this is what gets called before on game mode init starts. So make sure you got this. So just type main and put the brackets like that, and then do open bracket and closing bracket like this, and just do a space in between, sort of thing. Like I've got a space in between, or you can go like this, like that sort of thing, where it's like this. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you got that. And so that's variables and like basically one of the fundamental basics of game modes. So basically the way callbacks work, think of callbacks of like things happening within the server. Like on game mode init, which is on game mode initiate. This is when the server starts, and on player connect, it's when the player connects. So basically there's sort of a process with callbacks. So basically the way it will start is that these callbacks will be called sort of in a row. So this callback will be called first, and that's when the server starts. And then when a player connects, a player will actually connect and it will call this callback. And if you notice, there's there's nothing here, and there's player ID here. These things are called parameters. So this is the player ID of the player connecting. pretty much. So basically, once a player connects, the next callback will be called is on player request class. I'll show you on screen now. It's when you actually select your skin before you actually click spawn, and when you click spawn, this callback gets called before you actually spawn. So once this callback is actually returned one, you can stop this from you can actually keep them in class selection by returning 0 here and doing force class selection like that, and that will actually keep them in the class selection where they won't be able to get out of it. So that's just a little tip like that, and that's basically one of the functions. We're going to get into that in this next callback. Or wait, let me actually continue the process. So the game starts, they connect, they request a class, they request their spawn, then they spawn. Then the next thing that could happen is they die, and then they disconnect, let's say for that, and then the server shuts down. So as you can see, I've got step 1, step 2, step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is basically like the basics of computers is the script will read from left to right, from top to down, sort of thing. So this is sort of the process from start to finish. If a player just connects, dies, and then disconnects, and then the server shuts down basically afterwards. That's basically the process there. That's just so you understand callbacks a little bit more. But basically, let's start doing things under these callbacks. So basically, what we can do here is we can use functions. So basically, functions are things that you use to get things or set things, sort of thing. So basically, there's a function called get game mode text, which is basically just a string, and this is I'll show you on screen now. This is actually the game mode that shows in the client. So this could be cops and robbers or whatever your game mode is. You can add that there, and I'm not sure if that can be called somewhere else, but you put that under on game mode and that sets the game mode to cops and robbers. So let's get a bit more complex with functions, but we'll use player functions this time because we've got the player parameter here, and we have to use the player parameter to be able to set each player ID, sort of thing. So what we'll do is we'll use variables to get data from functions. So what we can do is we can use variables to get the player's score, for instance. So we can go new score. Actually, no. Let me show you something a bit more useful that will actually work under OnPlayer Connect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to pretty much list the player connecting, and shows you how to use variables and also functions. So basically, what we want to do is we want to go string, because we want to create a string to put the message in. So we'll go string 128. That just gives us 128 cells. That's plenty of cells to use. And like to add a new string, instead of going like this for a new string, what you can do is you can go like this and go dash like that, and then you can add a new variable. So we want to add another string for the name, and the max player cells for the name is 24. So remember that's the max player name. So we'll go like that, and then what we'll do is we'll use a player function this time, and we'll actually save we'll use player name player ID. We need to specify the player ID for the name. Like if you're using Sublime text, you actually see how I'm getting like things like this. You'll be able to do that, and like you'll be able to search for different things. You could type in player and see all the player functions and all that sort of thing. But if you typed in name, you'll see get player name, and what you do is you just click it, and it gives you all the parameters. So basically, there's the player ID parameter, and then there's the string, basically the string, and then the size of the string, which is the size of the string is 24. So there's two different ways we can do this. What you can do is go name, and like this is a good way to do it. You can go 24, or you can go size of name. So you can actually just change the cells. If you do change the string cells for some reason, you don't have to go through the functions and change it as well. So now we've got the player's name when we saved it to this string. Now we've got the actual player's name, and what we can do is now use like use another function, which is not a player function, it's just a normal function called format. And what we'll do is I'll go like that, and then it's the output. So basically it's the format. So what we want to do is we want to format this string and put the player's name into that string and say this player has connected the server. So basically what we do is we go string, and we can go length here, we can go 128, or we can go size of string. And then what the format is basically the actually what you're formatting, and this part here I'll tell you in a second. So basically what we want to do is we want to go say server, and then we want to do this is where these things come into play. So for numbers, if we want to format a number, we need to use that. If we want to format a decimal, we need to use that. And for strings and floats, for that as well. So the booleans don't come into play here. So remember, I is practically integer, D is decimal, S is string, and F is float. You should be able to remember that easy if you remember it that way. So basically what we want to do is we want to actually put the player's name into this string now. So now we've specified a string here, we need to actually put the string that we're specifying here. So what we want to do is go name. So now that will actually go server, and then that will show the player's name. But now what we want to do is we want to go like this, and then inside here we want to go here and then go I, and we can put the player ID like that. So as you can see, on like the player that's connected, we've got the player ID's name, and now we've just showed their name in the string, and then we just printed their player ID also, and then we can go has joined the server like that. So now what we want to do, now we've formatted that string, we now need to specify what we want to do with that string. So what we can do is go send client message to all. And what we do is specify a color. You should already know how to do colors, but you can go -1 for white. And then what you do here is we want to specify the message, which is the string. Remember, that always means string. Like things like a parameter like that and like this are numbers, but a parameter like that is a string. It's asking for the message string to send. And this is the string that we just formatted, and this is what we want to send to them. So what we do is we go like that, and bang. That's as simple as it is. So every time a player connects, it will send everybody a message saying that their name or ID has joined the server. And what we can do is we can copy that exact text and go down on player. What we need to do there, I'll come back to here later. I'll come back to this later. But basically, we do the exact same thing, and we can go left the server. So it's pretty much the exact same thing, because we're like we can change the text like here, and it's the same parameters because we're showing like the player ID and that. So basically that's basically how formatted strings work. So basically remember, it's always the main ones you're going to use are I, S, and F. An integer, a string, or a float, and a D is a decimal. So, all right, so let's work down. So now we can go to on player spawn. So now what we can do is we can use like enum data. I'll show you how to use enum data, and we can specify a first spawn. So we can sort of give a player weapons only for their first spawn. So if they die, and then in this case it calls on player spawn straight away after they die. So when they die, they respawn. We don't want to give them guns after they respawn. We want to actually remove them, but we want to give them when they first spawn. We want to give them a set of guns. So what we can do is we can go to the top of the script under the variables. Always put this at the top of the script. We can go enum, and we can go player underscore data, and then we can go like this, and then just put a comment like that, and then go like this, and then go new player data. Now this is a variable just like these. You can name it whatever you want. This could be called player info, or just you know, people sometimes do p info like this. You can do whatever you want. So we'll go p info max players. Now this might look like a string, but it's not, because what we're doing is I'll teach you what this is in a second. So we'll go max players, and then we can go player data. So what this is we're creating an enum. So player data, we can put things under here like player kills, and then we can add to that variable to increase their kills. But what we want to do in this case, we want to create a boolean, because we want to do a boolean check, which is true or false, because we want to see if they've spawned or not. So we want to go like if is player spawned is true sort of thing. So we'll go bool, and then we'll go player spawned. And again, you can name it whatever you like. You can name this whatever you like. Just make sure it's the same as that. Name whatever you like. And the max players pretty much specifies, max players. This pretty much says this max players, which is say 500. So it's pretty much saying that. So player 500, it will go from 0 all the way up to 499. So like we can create a player info for every single player ID. So this just specify the max amount of player IDs. So now we can use this info for players. And whatever the player data is, whatever we use here, so basically what we do is we go like this, and then we can go to on player spawn. Remember, when you add data, always reset it under on player connect. So we'll go here, and this is where we reset the data. So has on player spawn equals false. I haven't typed it yet, but basically info for the player ID, player spawned equals false, right? Now, if we put a variable here, say, player number, whatever that variable is, but it's an integer, like it's a variable sort of thing. You won't be able to do false here. It will show an error. What you do is the integer, whatever this is, you would be just set it to 0 sort of thing. So you have to reset whatever the data is, because whenever it gets set for the player, when the player disconnects, all this data will stay the same. So when a new player connects, it will think that the data is for that same player, but it's not the same player. So what you do is you reset all the enum data or the player data always under on player connect, so it resets it straight away as soon as they connect, and you don't have to worry about it. So basically, now we set that to is player spawned false under on player connect. So we set it to false to make sure it's false. And now when they go through the steps and go through this process and get to on player spawn, we like there'll be a first time they spawn and a second time they spawn and so on. So basically what we do is if p info equals spawned equals this. We pretty much do this variable but an if statement. You've got to do 2 for if statements like this, and when you set it you use 1. But basically if is player spawned equals false, they haven't spawned yet. So this is their first spawn. So this will be their first spawn. And what you can do is just go else and go like this, and this is their spawn after death. Right? So when they connect, their first spawn will this code will execute here, but when they die, it will keep executing this code here. So what we want to do is when they die, we want to remove their weapons. So we can go reset player weapons, and as you can see, there's a function. We can go like that, and that will reset the player's weapons, under their spawn after death. So this one is the first spawn sort of thing. So what you do here to make sure this gets executed for their second spawn is straight away you reset that to true. So now if player spawned equals false won't execute, it'll be true, else it's true, it will execute this. So what you do is you make sure you set that to there, because when a player connects it will get resetted. So that's the process you do it in. Now under their first spawn, say we want to give them a deagle. So we'll go give player weapon. So give player weapon player ID. These are the parameters for this function. So remember to always do that at the end. So basically it's a player ID, the weapon ID, and ammo. And what I'll do is I'll put the link in the description how to get weapon IDs, because there's an ID for each weapon, and this is where you specify the ammo. So the deagle is actually ID 24. And say we want to give them 500 ammo. So the first time the player connects, the first time they spawn, they'll get a deagle, but if they die, they'll lose all their weapons, even if they pick up other weapons somehow, sort of thing. So basically, that's how you do first spawn checks and like play enum check sort of thing. So basically, let me scroll down now. So under on player def, we can actually, instead of doing it here, say we don't want to do this here, we just want to um, do whatever here. This is whatever. But what we want to do is under on player def, we can reset their weapons like this. And what you can do too is you can also go set player health, and you can reset it to 100. Now see how I'm going like this? That's because it's a float, it floats like this. So 0, that's a float for 0, and this is 100. So basically what we're doing is we're setting the player's health to 100. And what we can do is we set their armor. Say you want to remove their armor. When they die, you just set it to 0. And this will make more sense here. So what we're going to do is under their first spawn, we could set the armor. So you should understand basically what's going on here. So basically what you want to do is you always want to reset things under on player connect. So you reset all the data under on player connect, and you can reset functions under on player def for certain things, or under on player, on player, like what we did here, as we can reset functions under on player spawn. And that's basically functions and that. So we'll move on to commands. So basically down commands, it's going to get a little bit more complex now. So what you're going to do, what I need you to do is make sure you got Z command and scanf installed. Basically, download Z command, make it an include called zcommand.inc, and put it in your porno includes, and that's Z command. And for scanf, make sure you download the include plus the plugins, and put the include in porno includes and the plugins in plugins folder, and make sure you go to your server CFG and put the scanf2 or scanf, I think it is, in the plugins line. It's one or the other. So make sure you do that. And so basically, all right, now we're up to commands. So basically with commands, this is a basic command to be able to give player weapons, because what we want to do is what we're doing here is we're making a command called give player weapon, and we're using scanf to be able to use parameters like this. So give player weapon, and we can specify a player ID and a weapon ID and the ammo. So what we need to do is we need to actually create these variables. So we'll create a new variable, which is a number, an integer. So it's like this, it doesn't have cells like this, remember that, strings only have that. So we can go new target ID, new weapon ID, or new ammo, or we can go like this, new target ID, like I showed you before, weapon and ammo, just so it looks a lot more cleaner. So now we've got the target ID. So basically what scanf is doing is it's going through the parameters, and these are the parameters. So it's working out what's been typed here. So what we want is the target ID, weapon ID, and the ammo, and they're all integers. But for the target ID, I'm doing it in a way where they can type the player's name or the player's ID. So U means you can type their name or their ID, or if you go like that, they can only type their ID. So make sure it's U for target ID always, and then for integers, just use I and I. So we need weapon ID and ammo. So make sure you always update this when you update this. So see how I've got 3 and I've got 3 here, so make sure you always update that. So basically that's that command. So when they do that command, it's going to give the target ID, the weapon ID, plus the ammo. See, now we can get a bit more complex here, because the player can type in a weapon ID that doesn't exist. So what we can do is we can do an if statement here and check this weapon ID. We can go if weapon ID is less than I'll put the numbers up on screen now. So if it's less than, I think it's 20 or 21, whatever it is, if it's less than, whatever the number is, so whatever the lowest ID number is, or, which is those two numbers, like those two things like that, whatever they're called, and then that means or, and this means and. When you do two of them like that, but we want to go if weapon ID is less than the lowest ID, or it's weapon is more than 42, because I know the 42, it could be a bit more. So let's just say those are the numbers. Like I've already put it up on screen so you can know what they are. So basically, the lowest weapon if whatever weapon ID they type is an invalid weapon ID pretty much, because it's less than the lowest one and higher than the highest one, we can send them an error message now saying invalid weapon ID. It can be must be from 0 to 42 in this case, but whatever it is for you. So basically, that's how you do a check like that. And you can do a check, if ammo, actually you would want to do a check like this. So we can go if check ammo is more than 994 nines. So if it's more than 4 nines, if you actually give a player or yourself an ammo with 5 nines, it will max out the ammo and give them infinite ammo. So we want to make sure that their max ammo that they can they can give a player is 9,999. And what you do is you send them another error message like this. Actually, I did this if statement wrong. What we need to do is, this is only checking if the ammo is more than that. Like we need to also do if ammo is less than 0, or it's so this is their so you need to do that check just in case they put a number in that's -1 or -2, whatever. You don't want to give them -1 ammo because you can't. So you will do a check like that. So it must be, less than 900 and more than 0, sort of thing like that. So basically, those are basically basic commands with basic if statements like this. And you can basically copy this whole thing like this and create a whole new command and called set health, right? And we can change this. Now we want to keep the target ID, but we want to specify health. But health this time is going to be a float, because it's health is a float. Positions and health and armor are floats. So we can go float X, float health, sorry, I'm doing. So float health, and what we do is we go F for float. So target ID and float. So the target ID and float. So basically we can go set health, alright? And there's only one check we need to do here, which is basically this one, like this, and we can just go if health is less than 0, because we don't want them to try and do -1, and if health is more than 100. So that means they can only set it to 1 or up to 100. And like we can go invalid health amount. Alright, so that's a basic check there, and what we do is we set player health like that, and then we set the target ID's health, and then we set the health, which we just set here in the parameters. So that's basically pretty much the exact same thing, but setting health instead of weapons. So that's basically the basic concept of commands. So let's move on to the next one. Alright, the next one is forwards and publics and loops. So basically, I'll go down to here. So basically forwards are basically publics. These are main publics, right? But if we wanted to create our own public, say on player hack, because there is no default anti-cheat, you have to sort of create your own anti-cheat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to use publics and forwards. So basically, if you want to make a new public, you've got to specify a forward, which has got to be above it. You can put it at the top of the script or just above like that. And basically that creates a new public. So basically we want to use this public as a timer. We want this to be called every second, so we can check if a player is hacking every second, sort of thing. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go under on game mode init, and we go set timer like this, and we go on player hack like this. We put it into a string like that, and the interval is in milliseconds, so we want it every 1 second, so we put 1000, and we put true here for repeating, because we want it to repeat. We don't want it to just do one to happen once. If you've done false here, it would only happen once. It'll happen once in 1 second and won't happen again. So make sure it's true. So now we've now we've set a timer. There's now a timer happening every 1 second, and it's calling this callback every 1 second. So what we need to do is we need to loop through players. This is basically a for loop. Basically, what is happening here is it's going to be a loop that starts at 0 and his max players say is 500. So let's say it's like that. The loop is basically doing, we're setting a new variable, which is obviously like that, and it doesn't have cells like this, remember that. So new variable, and we're just calling it I, equals 0. So we're setting it to start at 0. We're pretty much telling it to start at 0, and we're telling it that I is less than 500, and we're telling I to continue. Plus plus means continue, minus minus means plus plus means add, sorry, and minus minus means remove to the I. So basically what will happen in this for loop, we want to go plus plus, is it will start at 0 and then go all the way up to 500, which is 499. It will do 500 loops, which is 0 to 499. So basically that's what's going to happen in the loop. So max players is basically the max players, which I think has changed to 1,000 now. So it could be 500, 1,000, but whatever it is, make sure it's max players. You're not doing 500. And then so with this loop happening now, we're looping through all the player IDs. So these player IDs could be connected or they could not be connected. So what we want to do is we only want to loop through the connected players. So what we do here is we go if, and then we go is player connected. And we use that function. We see if the player is connected. If the player is not connected, it'll be like this. If the player is not connected, we can do a check like that. But if the player is connected, we only want to loop through connected players. And we can do another check here. Remember, we can go n like this, and we can go not is player NPC, and that way, because NPCs have player IDs, and the loop will actually loop through all the NPCs. So what we want to do is we only want to loop through online players and players that are not NPCs. And the player ID is now I, which we specified. You can specify it like this if you want to, and go like this, and it will keep it like player ID like that, so it looks better. And basically now we're only looping through connected and non-NPC players. So now what we want to do is we want to do a check to see if the player's health is more than 100, to see if they're health hacking. So this is basically a stock function. This is where I think it's the last one, yeah, stock functions. The last one comes into play. So stock functions are basically, instead of creating our own callback like this, because we're using it as a timer, what we're doing is we're creating our own function basically. Like these are all functions, we're creating our own functions. So what we can do here, like this is basically a standard function to get to return the player's name. So in strings like this, up here, what we can do is we can go return player name, player ID, and it's a lot easier to return the player's name because now we don't have to specify the string or remove the function. Or use the function. We can just specify the string and then return the player name straight into the string like this. And that's what that would do. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to create another one, and we can go stock, but this time we want to get the player's health. So we'll go return player health like this, player ID, for the player ID. But because it's a float, because this is a string, you can return strings and variables normally, but with a float, for the function, you need to specify that it is a float. The function is returning a float, sort of thing, because we're getting a float and going to return a float. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go new float health like this, and then we're going to go get player health like that. We're going to go like this, and we're going to go health. And then what we're going to do is we're going to return health. So now we can use that that stock function that we've just created, which is practically your own functions. So now I can go here and go if get player health. Like what you can do is you can actually do this. this bit of code here, right here, sort of thing, and it will do the exact same thing, but this is just me showing you how to make your own stock functions. So basically, if return player health is more than 100, they're hacking. So what we want to do here is we can get and grab this sort of system up here, get player's name and string, we need all of that. So we'll grab that and we'll put this here. Actually, oh yeah, that's player ID, and then we can go like this. And what we're doing is we're getting the name and we're formatting into a string again. But this time we're saying has been kicked from the server for health hacks, like that. So basically, you can go like that, and then what you can do here is actually, I've got to show you this here. We're going to create another callback because we need to create another timer. Because if you just kick the player here like this, there's sort of a bug where this message won't show properly if you kick them like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another forward and another public like this. Alright, so now we're going to call this one on player kicked. So we'll go like this and we'll call the callback like that. But this time for this forward, we're going to specify the player ID because we want to kick the player ID. We don't want to loop through the player. Alright, so now we've created that, we've got make sure you always return ones with everything in callbacks, functions, everything. You're always returning a one, like one, to tell the server that it's stopped now, everything's done. So basically for on player kicked, what we want to do is we can return it here and we can go kick player ID like that. And now what we want to do is we want to make a timer, but this time we want to go set timer EX, and this time we'll go on player kicked, and the interval we're doing 1 second. You only need to do it for about 1 second, and we'll go false because we don't want it to repeat. And this is where it gets a little bit different. We've got a format pretty much how scanf does it. We got a format what type of like variable is here. So we want to do player ID. So what we do is we go like this, player ID, and we go I for player ID there. So that's how you do a set timer EX, which is practically creating timers for players without having to loop from, sort of thing, like like this. So now we set that timer, it'll go to on player kicked, so it will send a message 1 second later, then it will kick the player. So that's basically what I had to show you for today. If you like these videos, make sure you hit the like button and consider subscribing so you see the next tutorial when I post them. And we'll see you in the next one, guys.